Welcome to Disambiguation. I'm your host, Michael Fawcett. Each week we interview experts in AI, generative AI, and business automation to help business leaders understand how to use these tools for the biggest business impact. In our show today, we look at conversational AI and technical support. I'm joined by Robert Rupprecht, Senior Manager, Technical Support at Kustomer. Robert, welcome.
Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for having me.
Really glad to have you today. So could you do a quick introduction and then just tell us a little bit about your role at Kustomer?
Sure. So for the past 17 years of my career, I've been working in the software as a service industry. For the first 12 and a half of those years, I worked in talent acquisition, applicant tracking software, and worked building a lot of their customer service organization. A lot of different teams, scaled them up. And then about 4 years ago, I moved on over to Kustomer, where, of course, as you mentioned, I'm the Senior Manager of Technical Support, where I lead our technical support organization. We have technical support engineers in Europe, in the East Coast of the United States, the West Coast of the United States, so we can ensure that we cover a 24/5 support experience for our customers. One thing at Kustomer that we do is we pride ourselves on being consultative. We just don't want to be a support team. We want to be a technical support engineer team that can consult our customers and deliver them to the best outcomes possible, rather than just say break, fix, or answering questions.
Great. Well, so I know that you guys are using AI in several different ways, and maybe we just start by giving us a bit of an explanation on how you're currently, using AI in technical support and customer service, and then we can dive into some of the points around that.
Sure. So at Customer, we're using AI in a few different areas. First and foremost, we actually are using it in our inbound chat engagement. So when a customer or someone goes to our website and engages us in a chat conversation, we actually built a conversational AI bot that will allow you to converse and have multiple questions. Previously, a lot of old chat iterations would be one question, kind of that's it. It's the end of your interaction. This actually allows you to, utilizing AI, ask a question, receive an answer, ask a different question, receive another answer. And what we've seen with this is people who visit our site, people who may have questions, are able to answer multiple questions at the same time, rather than having to open up individual tickets or conversations as in Customer that will go to the support team. And kind of how that AI works is, rather than it just previously, what a lot of systems used to do is it would review your documentation. It will provide you a couple of links and say, go find that answer. It's actually reviewing all that information and concatenating the best answer possible based upon what your documentation or what your repository states, and provide that answer back to the customer. So rather than having the customer go find it in your documentation, what we're doing now is it's actually providing you the steps needed or the answers to the questions that you're having. So that's one of our first areas. The second area is it's actually natively built into our system. So it's our KIQ section is what it's called. We have Agent Assist. So Agent Assist is actually internally, it will provide it will concatenate those answers so that when you're answering a customer via a conversation, it will actually supply you some options to provide them and kind of build a response from the data that the AI has pulled.
Sure. Well, just to clarify, because I know you and I talked about this before, but you're using your own company's software to do all of your own internal operation support, technical support, right?
Correct. So we use our own customer system to engage with our customer clients.
K and a C. That's going to be confusing. No, it's good. No, that makes sense. And so what I heard in there too that I think is interesting is that transition from kind of the old logic tree based chatbot to a more of a conversational chatbot that actually provides a much different experience than perhaps the old chat systems did. And certainly all of us have experienced those kind of frustrating experience with the chatbot that didn't answer your question because you asked a question it didn't have a pre-program for. So
correct.
Yeah, that's good. So I'm curious in this, how is AI, helping you, helping your agents identify and resolve issues in some proactive way, like before they become major problems for the customer?
Yeah, sure. So we're actually leveraging it in a couple of ways. We're actually going through some iterations of trying to find what's the best option. So some of the things that we thought of, first and foremost, is the conversational AI portion of the bot will be answering questions. So we're seeing actually an increase in our number of conversations that are answered before they get to agents. I mean, we're seeing that happen month over month. Behind the scenes, we're actually working on more projects that are helping build out that documentation. Our one goal is to always make sure that we're able to engage with customers on the complex items, and some of those other ones that can be answered earlier on can be done so by the bot. And that, of course, involves us updating documentation, making sure that it is outlined in the best scenario. So when a question comes in, it will pull that data. So that's number one. That's the first half of it. The second half of it is leveraging AI to actually look at some of our trends. Using say a chat GPT tool to put in some of our data and say, what do you see here? Rather than looking at, thousands of tickets or conversations at a time, have the system do that. And then say, here are your trends. Here are where your conversations are talking, what the focus of your system is engaging on. And then we can then deep dive that even more, even with AI, or even with the members of the team and reviewing and saying, now what do we need to engage and update? Because if we're seeing trends that questions are starting to focus on maybe these areas of our system, that's where we want to beef up our documentation to make sure that in the future AI can answer them.
Yeah. So it sounds like in two ways you're using AI. One, of course, is in this hybrid model that is directly with the customer, so they interact with the with the chatbot, and if they can't get a resolution there, then they're escalated to an agent. The agent then has all the context and answers the question. So that makes sense. And then in the other part of that, it sounds like you're enabling a bit of proactive outreach to customers to head off issues that you see as developing trends over time in your own data. Did I understand that correct?
Correct. Yeah, that's our second iteration that we want to move towards.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and certainly shifts from the kind of the passive and reactive version of support into a much more proactive. So that seems like that would be a
Correct.
huge advantage for your customers. Yeah.
Yep.
So can you give us some examples of, and you mentioned using ChatGPT in the tool already, but can you talk a little bit about your AI-driven tools in the platform and how you see those tools really improving technical support outcomes?
Yeah. So actually, with ChatGPT, our system specifically, what we're using ChatGPT 4.0 Mini. That's what our agent assist and our customer assist, so to speak, portions are utilizing. And then, of course, as new iterations of ChatGPT come out, we want to harness some of the features that those are coming out with. While not necessarily used by customer, I know the other power players in the world of tech have their own iterations of AI that I know other organizations are leveraging. So essentially we're choosing ChatGPT at this time, but you have to build something on a backbone. So essentially that's what we're leveraging, and then ensuring that as new iterations come out, we're ensuring that we're using the newest and latest features that customers can then have a better support experience from.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you're using Mini or 4.0 Mini instead of standard ChatGPT 4.0. Is that mostly for speed in the response, or are there some other benefits to that?
Yeah, mostly for speed. We wanted to focus primarily on what's the best to provide the fastest processing. So that's why we implemented that area of our system.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And is the system open? So could you, if let's say if I'm your customer and I already have an arrangement with Entropic, could I use that API instead of the Chat GPT, the OpenAI's API, or are you really set
Yeah.
into
Yep.
this? And that's more of a customer software question than a technical
Yeah.
support question, but I was just curious.
Yeah. So from the native features, they're always going to use that backbone. But there are anything else as long as you can integrate. Our system is very open to have integrations through of course APIs and whatnot, and it's really secure. So if you want to layer on a different iteration, or if you want to build your own that
Mm,
that kind of looks into your own repository, your own AI
Sure.
based upon another backbone, you'd be able to configure that. It may take a little bit, some
Sure.
configuration and some development, but you can definitely, the system's robust and allow you to function that.
Yeah. Good. That's I think that's going to be one of those things you see customers start to look for more and more if they want to. They're trying to build an extra layer of security and privacy around their data. Maybe they're running their own local model, Mistral or something. Yeah. So what do you see as key benefits as you've implemented these different AI tools? In your support environment, what are you getting out of this, and maybe even what kind of metrics do you look at as you're doing that have helped you understand the benefit?
Yeah, two things to start off with. First, it's time. So what we've noticed is, of course, I'll take a big step back on when engaging customer support. I think the majority of folks, if they don't want to engage customer support, they want to kind of self kind of either
Yeah.
support themselves and get to an end goal, regardless of what industry you're in, and you're trying to talk to a support team.
Mhm.
It could be B2C or even B2B. You want to get that answer as quick as possible, because especially when you're working in an organization, time is money, so to speak. So
Yeah.
the faster you can get that solution, or the faster you can get that answer or walkthrough, the better. So that's what having an AI, having a conversational bot, being able to answer multiple questions in a session, so to speak, will get you that answer faster. And the best part about it uh, is it's complementing the actual technical support team. So if you're able to get those quick items off the plate and the customer can move forward, it's when the complex items come forward is when they would want to engage that support
Mm.
to get those answers. And having those items off the plate of the support team will allow them more time to really be more consultative and engage the customer. And number two is accuracy. Being
Mm.
able to have the same answer each time. I know that there's been countless times when you call up a support organization and you maybe get answer one from agent one and answer two from agent two.
Mhm.
Maybe slightly different, maybe lingo is used differently. Having kind of an AI tool in there will actually deliver the same answer multiple times. So it doesn't matter if customer one or customer two comes in, they're going to get the same answer to that same question.
Mm. So consistency, and the other thing that I hear this discussed, but you I think approach this in a more positive way. You hear companies talk about deflection, and the idea that we're answering these, some questions so that we don't need agents to answer that level of question. But it seems to me that the way you framed it, I think, is really important for companies to understand that you're not talking about pushing the customer away. You're talking about quickly answering certain questions that are in that range, but then giving your agents not less of them, but giving your agents the capability then to have more time to spend on really complex questions that you wouldn't be able to answer just through that conversational chatbot.
Correct. Yeah. And I say it all the time to anyone that I chat with. It's AI isn't here to say replace support or
Mhm.
different functions of an organization. AI is here to complement them and partner with the human
Mhm.
engagement. So
Yeah.
really, it allows like you said, the quicker answers to get answered. Those items that are sort of low hanging fruit, so to speak. And
Yeah.
especially in the world of customer, our system is very robust. If you develop and you know how to code and you can build a really fully functioning system. It can
Mhm.
work for any size organization, but you can really make it your own. And depending on how much
Mhm.
work you want to put into the development aspect of it and configuration aspect of it, and
Mhm.
when you do that and you set it all up with partnering in AI, your team, specifically, your support team, or in my case,
Right.
my team, can partner with those customers more, and it builds relationships more. It allows it to be more consultative. It allows it to be
Mm.
more guiding towards an end goal rather than spending time answering questions. We still do that. I think,
Sure.
but it allows those one-to-one, more human conversations to be more robust in
Mm.
the end goal the customer wants and the options they have to get there, rather than
Sure.
just focusing a lot of our time on answering questions or providing how the functionality works.
Mm. I mean, in a way, that actually helps a lot to understand that. But in a way, it's almost like you're saying that because you free up a certain amount of the bandwidth of your agents, they have the capability to be even more of a brand ambassador, to build relationships in a way that they wouldn't be able to in the old world of got to answer this question really quickly and get to the next one. And I'm chatting with four people at a time, and trying to balance all those things, which is difficult, especially in this kind of environment. The other thing too, when I surveyed, I run a few surveys from the perspective of consumers and what they think about support, and one of the things I heard very clearly was your commitment to self-service, and I get that from customers all the time, that there's a certain level of question that I don't really want to have to engage with a human. I just want to go in, get a quick answer, go solve my problem, and go back to work, right? But then there are some things that are complicated and they need more of a hand holding kind of an experience to make me more comfortable. So you get both. And that seems like that's much more effective. And then also the hybrid model, every time I ask that question, the hybrid model scores really high, that customers are really comfortable with engaging with a chatbot if I have the capability to go to a human if I need that. And probably the other piece of that is the capability for that engagement to shift from chatbot to human in a seamless way, right? Because that was kind of the old problem, was the break between the chatbot to the human was always really difficult, and I didn't want to go through my story again. And it's this way everything is held in the right
Yeah.
context. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And even the way that we have ours configured is, even though the AI is answering and you're having this conversation, you have the ability to say, this really isn't providing me the answer that I was looking for. And it routes directly to our team. So our team can engage it and review what your questions were, and, kind of pull out more information so we can get you to the best answer possible.
Yeah. No, that's great. So we kind of hinted around this idea of building about more personal experience, but I'd like to dig into that just a little bit. So how do you see, the AI driven technical support process that you've put in place? How does that help provide personalized customer experiences?
Okay, thanks. So for us, it's really driving towards that customer end goal. That's our ultimate goal with all of this, and having AI in place is the customer is going to present a question. We want to not just provide the answer, but we want to provide the best answer possible for them in a situation. So, as I can see us expanding and this kind of iterating, right, it's going to continue to grow and scale. Is what can we layer in there about maybe a specific customer industry, or maybe a specific customer size, so to speak. So one of the things that we've talked about is potentially looking at what our volume is, what our data looks like based upon the customer, the company size, the industry, and really, can we tailor some engagement with those customers moving forward? Can AI help us spot, for example, a customer in a specific industry, or most customers in a specific industry ask these common questions their first, X number of weeks after they go live? Can we build something that will then go out proactively to customers in that industry to say, here are common questions that we receive from customers like you? So there's a lot of things that we can layer onto there. And really make it more of a personalized experience. What you're probably seeing with some other organizations as well is, they're using it specifically, maybe a more B2C customer or company, as they're utilizing those to celebrate milestones, or to supply even product recommendations. So it's really, the sky's the limit with what AI can do, but really, how do we scale that up so we can engage our customers in that more personal level? And like I mentioned, one of the ideas is really to maybe look at industry, look at customer size, and then really engage them with items that it's going to be valuable to them, rather than just, maybe like, hey, here's some documentation. It's really, here's some answers to questions you're going to have.
Yeah, rather than just break fix, you're really talking about the capability to reach out to them in a much more engaging way to solve problems before they happen, or as they're happening, I guess. I mean, and it's interesting too, because you're not just saying that it's individualized, but you're saying that there's also this broader capability to change the way you segment, so that you could segment down to much smaller, discrete segments that need specifics, like I'm in this kind of industry in this region in this sort of use case, and because of that, here are some personal answers that would help me get ahead of some problem or something, right?
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, that seems like that's a tremendous value to the customer, and really to the customer's customer. That's really difficult to say, huh? Sorry, yeah, I love the idea of that and how you could really start to provide a much broader experience. This is not an easy change for companies, and so I really would like to understand what in you since you've gone through this, with your team personally, you should have a really interesting perspective. What are the challenges? What do companies face when they're integrating AI into the support process, and how do they head those off?
Yeah, it all depends on what you have currently. What does your infrastructure look like? I know, if a company is still using different methods, say maybe an
Mm,
email engagement with their team, and it's not really tracked by a system, it may be a little harder to layer on AI. But really, the first challenge is having a robust infrastructure that can allow this engagement. I know the AI tools are powerful, but can they integrate with what you have
mm,
set up before? Or currently? Are there different iterations of your current infrastructure that maybe you need to adjust? Maybe you do need to, invest in some other backend or other method so you can then attach the AI into it.
mm,
That could be a challenge, but what we're seeing, especially us customers, we're doing it as well, but a lot of other software providers is they're building items that are natively within their own platform. So, like I mentioned a little earlier, like our KIQ, our agent assist, our customer assist, they have them already built in. And of course, we're looking at ways to scale that out as well into different areas of our platform. And I know
mm,
many other software companies are doing the same thing. So
mm,
the good part about it is if you do have an existing infrastructure that's solid and strong, or you do have some systems in place, you're probably starting to see some tools get presented to you. And a lot of these organizations are layering it into their product offering. So you get access to this almost immediately, and then you can leverage it and configure it to meet your own system's needs. So the biggest challenge is hopefully having a great infrastructure, but if you have some baseline in there or some systems in there, you're starting to see this get layered in. And
mm,
then the other challenge would be is that, if you do, like you mentioned a little earlier, can you use other tools and whatnot?
right.
It's how much work do you want to put in? How much investment do you want to put on your side of maybe
Mhm,
development or configurations and integrations to really make your entire experience be more robust? And some
mm,
organizations maybe don't have that ability to do it, but what we're seeing with AI is that it's really starting to take over a lot of areas and facets of our day to day, more than just support. But are you willing to put some time and effort into scaling out your own offerings?
mm.
Some maybe configuration or network on your end.
Yeah, that makes sense, and it sounds like underneath that, there's a good bit of change management that you're working through with your agents to help them kind of be comfortable in this newer environment and frankly, a little shift in their role too, right? I mean, they're becoming much more involved in relationships than they would have been maybe in the past, when they didn't really have the time to do that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct.
Well, so speaking of humans in this conversation, we hear a lot, the lore around bringing AI into the business is, oh well, it's going to replace some of your workforce, and you have to worry about your job and all those kinds of negative things. But you haven't come at this from a negative way at all. So I'd love to understand how you see the role of the human support agent, as we become more and more, capable with the AI. How does that role evolve?
Yeah, great question. And I know I mentioned a little earlier here is, I always see it as it's complementing each other. The AI,
Mm,
support is engaging the human aspect to help alleviate some of the work going there. And then from the agent aspect, it's how do we, kind of feed the AI more information so that it can
mm,
provide more of those answers? Because at the end of the day, like I mentioned a little earlier, it's we want to work with customers on those complex items. We want to make sure that we're building those relationships and being consultative. I think, that was one of the things that we started doing at Customer when I started 4 years ago,
mm,
is really to be, drive the team to be a consultative team. And we built a great consultative organization. And now it's how do we spend our time and energy wisely focusing on that consultative aspect and helping customers reach end goals. So to kind of go back to your question is how it's going to evolve over time. The partnership
Mm.
is if, AI is continue going to get robust. There's going to be new features and new engagement, and I'm sure we're going to leverage as much as we can. But the agent aspect is are we delivering the best information to the AI in the whatever repository it is so that it can assist? Because it should always meet in the middle. There should always be an engagement with a human that will be able to be consultative and relationship based and driven towards the results of a customer, where maybe an AI may not get to there as quickly. So that's why there's always going to be that partnership between humans and AI.
Mm. Yeah, that's I mean that's certainly encouraging, and I've heard this repeatedly from different providers about this going forward. We're really not talking about taking the human completely out of the loop, but in fact keeping that in there and just evolving the roles. AI is going to get more capable. That opens up other opportunities for those human agents to be engaged with the customer in a different way.
Correct.
So I want to shift to data a little bit, and I'm curious about some things around privacy and PI and that sort of thing. But actually, maybe I should start one step before that. So when we were talking about challenges, we didn't really go into this, but I know I hear this a lot from customers that they're really challenged when they first try to go into this AI in any role, but particularly in support, with making sure they have complete data. So is that something that you went through as you were shifting to AI? Have you experienced that sort of siloed data problem, and how did you overcome that?
So that's a great question. So before even the AI was layered in, our tool did deliver kind of
Mm.
answers by
Right.
way of links and whatnot, like I mentioned a little earlier. So we've actually always had this initiative on the back end to
Mm.
review those and make sure that all of our data set is the best it could be.
Sure.
Is it fully robust and answers everything? No, every day we find some things that we don't have.
Yeah.
So we just essentially just continued that project that we have to review the incoming conversations, see if the answer was provided. If it
Mm.
wasn't, where in our documentation are we missing that question? Is it lingo based? Maybe they just used a different terminology than what we have in documentation. Is it we just don't have that answer documented right
Mm.
now? And so we have a project on the back end that's continually feeding our data. So we didn't really run into the data problem. So
Mm.
we have a really strong documentation and knowledge base on the back end that
Right.
we're just iterating on it now, and we're crossing T's, dotting I's, adding line items just to cover some items, and each month, and that's why we're seeing kind of I know you use the term deflections, but that's how we're seeing the answers by AI
Mm.
increase
Right.
each month over month, is because we're going back and we're kind of cleaning that data to make sure the correct data is there. So we didn't really run into problems
Mm.
with data per se, but we're continually improving it on the
Sure.
back end to make sure that answers are provided quicker and more
Mm.
accurately in the future if it gets asked again.
Yeah. So it seems like the one real advantage that you had going into this that perhaps, I run across a lot when I'm talking to customers that are thinking about what systems do I use. You had a system that you could utilize in a systematic way to overcome any need for improving the data quality to make the AI work, because you had actually already done a lot of that work by building out your knowledge base, by building out all of this underlying data in the system that then could be utilized once you did shift to using the AI in the process.
Correct. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I've seen that across my entire career. I've seen, if we
Yeah.
go back to the early part of my career, it was let's build as many, Word documents as possible and post them on our website. And then, that iterated into web pages that maybe are on our knowledge site. And then knowledge got kind of expanded into a knowledge base that was searchable and, could actually, you can provide links to customers. And then it kind of iterated into, can those links get provided proactively rather than it getting to a technical support engineer and then providing that answer. So, and then of course now it's scaling up into AI being able to read all the documentation, provide direct answers. So
Right.
I always like to say is no matter what team I've been on or helped scale out, is documentation is key, and it can help you from training your own agents, or it can help you from
Mm,
training your own users, or people who are using the platform specifically. But it can also help by answering questions. I always tell everyone is the more data you can have, the more content and knowledge that or in the knowledge base that you can have, the better. It's just that some organizations, of course, who are starting out maybe to start building that, I recommend that at any time. That should be one of the first things
mm.
that your services organization does, is really document your system and questions that can be asked, because it's just going to help you later on.
Yeah, that makes sense. I hear this a lot in conversations too. That is really the place where companies need to start, is they have to focus on the data. And in each function that may mean something different, right? But at least the point of having everything available in a consolidated way that you can use to train the AI, that you can use for the responses, that gets you a big jump ahead when you're implementing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I mentioned privacy, and so I am definitely interested here and concerned here, because you're dealing with customer data, you are using the language models, and of course, language models have the capability to be trained on any data they're exposed to. So I'd love to understand how in your system and your approach, how do you protect the personally identifiable information, PII, and other company data too? And then, are there any security or ethical considerations that the audience should have as they kind of go into this implementation around technical support?
Yeah, yeah. And I would say first and foremost, is to always consult, your data privacy team, your IT, your
Mm,
security team, whichever team that you have that oversees this. And then, if you are also a software company as well, you probably want to talk with your hosting team, because of course
mhm,
they're pulling in all the customer data as well, and being able to have them in the conversation and speak, because you could be an organization maybe wants to scale out your AI offerings. They're the best people who will tell you, how to make it secure, how to make it, authenticate it with, dual factor and all that other stuff, and kind of keep the people who can see that data down to a very small group. And then, of course, the other thing is, each company may have their own privacy policy or data
mhm,
retention policy. I know based upon where you live in the world, you may have different data retention policies, of keeping that data. So, for us specifically, it's having those conversations and engaging those teams and making sure that we do have methods in place that that data is not available to a lot of people, and that data is,
mm,
if it follows a certain policy, it's deleted over time and whatnot. So I know if everyone's going to be a little different, so I recommend just everyone engaging their internal teams, as well as maybe even
mm,
hosting organizations that have the
mhm.
data within their database.
Yeah. So it's a team effort, and
Yeah.
that's not a surprise, obviously, but I think that's great advice for the audience to take away, that you really can't do this in an isolated way. It does involve a lot of different parts of your internal organization that you need to get aligned to make sure that you're both building the system that's going to work the best for your customers, but also that you're staying compliant and safe and secure, and meeting any privacy regulations, depending on where you do
Yeah.
business. Obviously, those are different, but yeah.
Yeah, and they're the best teams to evaluate the different tools that maybe you're looking at, or the different hosting providers or whatnot, and they're going to be the ones that show, okay, like these are the
Mm,
people who are meeting our own security standards based upon what we want to have as an organization.
yeah. No, that's good. Well, so we've talked about kind of what you're doing now for the whole conversation, but let's shift a little bit and look into your crystal ball and tell me, what do you see in the future for AI driven technical support? What do you anticipate that we're going to have as an opportunity over the next few years?
Yeah, I mentioned this one a little earlier, and that's definitely spotting the trends based upon industry.
Mm,
That's one of the things that I feel, as AI continues to get robust, and as we continue to gather data based
mm,
upon customers, say industry and size, we definitely would be able to spot those trends, so we can be proactive, answer those questions before they come. It also even helps from my company's perspective, or any other software company's perspective, is it's not just let's spot trends and answer questions. It's maybe let's spot trends and change the product so that those questions may not happen again. So if we're seeing maybe customers ask a lot of a very specific question about maybe a configuration to make, maybe we make that ability to make that configuration easier so that question
Mm,
doesn't have to be asked. So it actually helps the product side as well as the customer side. It's being proactive almost on both aspects. So those are really the two areas that I can see it really scaling out and providing, because the best answer is one that's not asked, right? Because if you
right.
can solve that question before it comes, you don't have to worry about, having to build an answer or provide
Mm,
an answer to a customer. And then once again, to go back to what we were talking about a little earlier, is then that just allows your team to be even more consultative and
sure.
personalized when they're engaging customers on those complex items.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the real advantage of shifting from reactive to proactive and prescriptive, in support obviously could have a huge implication with the relationship with customers as you go forward. I mean, if if my providers are sending me, once a month they say, "Hey, you need to do this so this doesn't happen." That's way better than me having to go, "Oops, this happened. What do I do?" Right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's a much better experience. So that's great. Thank you. Well, that's all the time we have today. But but the one thing I like to do at the end before we go, could you recommend someone, a thought leader or an author that you follow and you think the audience would get benefit from, would enjoy?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the thought leaders and leader per se that I like to follow and read about is Bob Iger, who's the CEO of the Walt Disney Company. He wrote a book a few years back called Ride of a Lifetime that went through his whole career, even at his previous organization before it got acquired by the Disney Company, and the different leadership aspects and kind of decisions he had to make throughout the years and acquisitions. He really shines a light on what it's like to be a leader, what are the skills needed to be a leader, and then he
Mm,
even did a master class, which is a great master
great.
class to go watch and review. And it focuses a lot on those decisions and a lot on his leadership style.
Excellent. Thanks. That's a great recommendation, and I'll make sure I put that in the show notes. Well, Robert, thank you so much for joining today. Really, really informative conversation, and I'm sure the audience is going to take a lot away from this.
Yes. Thanks so much, Michael. It was great being here.
And that's the show for this week. Thank you all for joining. Remember to hit that subscribe button. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a 5-star rating on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform to help others find the show. For more on AI and other software research reports, briefs, and blog posts, check out arionresearch.com. If you have AI, generative AI, or business automation expertise, either as a provider or as an end user, email your information to disambiguation@arionresearch.com, and we'll see if we can get you on as a guest. Don't forget to join us next week. Disambiguation is an Arion Research production. I'm Michael Fawcett, and this is the Disambiguation Podcast.